In the news tonight, the 31st Jewish Festival for Culture and Arts kicks off with the participation of Jordanian and Arab artists. The United Nations calls for 48-hour local truce to let aid reach eastern Aleppo and other Syrian besieged zones. And the Turkish president declares a 3-month state of emergency in the country. Good evening and welcome to the News at 10. The 31st Jewish Festival for Culture and Art kicked off, featuring an assortment of shows performed by Jordanian, Arab and foreign artists and troops. Deputizing for His Majesty the King, Prime Minister Hani Moulghi attended the opening ceremony. Several leading Jordanian and Arab artists will participate in the festival activities. In 2011, the government revived the festival held at the ancient Greco-Roman city, which was first launched in 1981 after a 4-year suspension. Russia's 2 U-22 bombers carried out airstrikes near Syria's Palmyra and other towns in Syria's Homs province. The Russian Defense Ministry said the bombers destroyed 2 Daesh command centers, personnel and military machinery. The ministry also said the international coalition was warned in advance about the timing of the strikes and the flight routes. The United Nations called for Syria's warning signs to observe 48-hour local truce to let aid reach eastern Aleppo and other besieged zones. Jan Egeland, humanitarian advisor to UN Syria envoy Stefan de Mistura, said an escalation in fighting was stopping aid from getting through in many areas. Around 200 to 300,000 people in rebel-held eastern Aleppo have been cut off since fighting cut the last supply route, the Castello Road, on July the 7th. Egeland said several other besieged areas were also in dire need, including Daria and Madaya, where starvation was reported at the start of 2016.
We haven't been able to reach more than 3 of the 18 besieged areas by the 20th of July, given that July was the best month ever in terms of permissions granted by the government. We were actually granted permission to go to all of the besieged areas. So what is holding us back? The fighting is the main reason for why we are not going to all of these places.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry praised Germany for its contribution to the fight against Daesh and said the countries are committed to maintaining a strong European Union and NATO alliance. Kerry also praised Germany's contribution for the immediate urgent need of Iraq.
Let me first begin by thanking Germany for a very significant contribution yesterday, first as co-host of a pledging conference that pulled together $2.1 billion for the immediate urgent needs of Iraq. But Germany's individual contribution of $160 million is significant. Germany is a key leader in the anti-Daesh ISIL coalition. We look forward to their leadership and thoughts today about how we continue to put pressure not only on Daesh but on all terrorism, and we are committed to that. We're making progress against Daesh. We remain resolute against all terrorism.
Israeli occupation forces arrested 18 Palestinians in various West Bank cities. The Palestinian Prisoner Club said the Israeli forces stormed the cities Hebron, Bethlehem, Nablus, Ramallah, Tulkarem and Jenin and arrested 18 citizens under the pretext they are wanted. During the campaign, the Israeli soldiers raided, searched and ransacked a number of homes. Israeli occupation soldiers also pushed deep into Palestinian lands east of Rafah, south of the Gaza Strip. Palestinian sources said Israeli forces backed by military vehicles and bulldozers advanced tens of meters into the area and leveled citizens' lands. Israel's parliament passed a law enabling it to impeach deputies for incitement to violence, racism, or support for armed struggle against the state. It was a move critics said was aimed mainly at Arab legislators. The law requires at least 90 of the House's 120 members to vote in favor of disqualification, a majority likely to be hard to achieve in the fractious Knesset. Passed by a 62-47 vote, it is the latest example of legislation promoted by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's right-wing government that critics described as attempts to curb freedom of speech. There are 18 Arab members of parliament, 16 of them in the opposition. Arab citizens, many of whom identify as Palestinian, make up some 20% of Israel's population. The White House said the United States is encouraging the Turkish government to maintain democratic institutions after the attempted coup. This came as Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan has imposed the first nationwide state of emergency since 1980s. Erdogan said the state of emergency, which would last 3 months, would allow his government to take swift and effective measures against supporters of the coup and was allowed under the constitution. More in this report.
Turkey's Tayyip Erdogan has declared a 3-month-long state of emergency. The swift measure is an attempt to shore up last week's failed military coup and bring stability to the country. Nearly 250 people have been killed since the attempted coup. He called the emergency state necessary to cure a, quote, virus from the military, saying it was fully in line with the constitution. Though Turkish detractors disagree, the government has been purging members of judicial, military, civil service, and education in the aftermath of the attempted coup. International German, Dutch, and Canadian foreign ministers expressed concern about the crackdown in a meeting at the U.S. State Department. Erdogan accuses Fethullah Gulen, a longtime U.S. resident of Pennsylvania, of masterminding the coup. A spokesman for Gulen says he denies the charges. Washington says Ankara must provide clear evidence of Gulen's involvement before it considers extraditing him.
With just 5 months until Christmas, Santas from around the world are gathering in Copenhagen for a mid-season break at the annual World Santa Claus Congress. The annual conference gives them a chance to network, meet the public, and get into shape for the busy days in December. This year, 140 Santas from 12 countries gathered in the Danish capital for the 3-day event. Barcelona coach Luis Enrique said he is expecting Lionel Messi to return and start the new season with the same enthusiasm as he has always had. Messi said he was quitting his international career with the Argentina national squad after he missed his spot kick in the final of the Copa America against Chile in June, leading some to question to the Barcelona star's form. Enrique added that he would still like to see Messi play for Argentina if he decided to change his mind about quitting.
Su hábitat natural es el campo de terreno de juego rodeado de sus compañeros. Esta camiseta y este club hace que estos jugadores todavía vean refrendadas y reforzadas.
British enthusiasts have launched a bid for the ancient sport of jousting, in which riders in steel armor charge and try to knock each other off their horses with a 3.7-meter pole to be made an Olympic sport. Medieval knights turned to a jousting to showcase their strength, skill and horsemanship, with the first tournament held in 1066 and similar spectacles patronized by King Henry VIII and Queen Elizabeth I. While no new sports have been added for Rio de Janeiro, baseball and softball, karate, sport climbing, skateboarding and surfing have been recommended for inclusion at the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. And finally, the weather forecast, it remains fair in most regions tonight and moderate in the Jordan Valley and the Dead Sea with a low of 17 degrees. Tomorrow, a slight rise in temperature is expected, creating relatively hot conditions in the Jordan Valley and the Dead Sea, but moderate in the hilly areas. Daytime temperatures forecast in Amman will reach 24 degrees. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect a moderate day tomorrow with a high of 33 degrees, while winds will be northerly moderate to brisk and the sea is slightly high. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. And to close here our top stories once again, the 31st Jaros Festival for Culture and Arts kicks off with the participation of Jordanian and Arab artists. The United Nations calls for 48-hour local truce to let aid reach eastern Aleppo and other Syrian besieged zones. And the Turkish president declares a 3-month state of emergency in the country. And with that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Balqa. Thank you for joining us and have a lovely weekend.